So where I want to start right now is I want to talk about, so we're going to get to your question about what about Vicky's stuff, right? I already gave you the introduction to myself the first day of class, so I'm not going to repeat that. You're welcome to ask me any questions. But what I do want to talk about is this class in relation to, come on up here so I can sit here closer. Yeah. I want to talk about this class in relation to graphic design pre-computers, because you have computers at your fingertips, and what I find for most students is that you never put things on paper, and you always sit down in front of your computer, look at the blank screen, and figure something's going to magically come to you. Or you steal something off the internet and you manipulate it and think that it belongs to you. And it doesn't, because you've stolen something off the internet, and that's the foundation for your art. And on that vein, so I'm going to digress just a little for a second. On that vein, when there is nothing in the world that's ever going to be truly original, really. We end up stealing from everything. We do. We see things, we absorb things, we experience things, and it fuels our creativity and our imagination. But so creating something completely original is always a challenge. And what you will learn is how to think through things critically to create and communicate what it is you want. But what I want to show you is how things used to work in the olden days and describe my workflow process so you appreciate what you have at your fingertips here. So, for example, let me start with designing a logo. Let's start with that. So I'm going to kind of have my back to you a little bit. Okay. So when I designed a logo a long time ago, you would sit down right now at the computer and you'd start to play with type for a logo. Or you might go steal an image, or you might go to a clip art site or someplace that has stock images, things you can buy that you can have royalty free, or some of you might just pirate something off of images off the internet and claim it as your own, which is stealing. I always call it stealing because it's just stealing. And if you're a graphic designer and you do want to earn a living as a graphic artist, you can't steal images. Because if you're a graphic artist, they have to be original creations that you've designed, so you own the right to it and you own the right to sell it to other people. So that's where you land with it. So long ago, before computers, when we wanted to create, for example, a logo, I created this logo called for a company called Graphics Inc. Okay, sorry. And so, for example, when I decided on what the type was going to look like for Graphics Inc., there was no computer to go to, pull down the menu, look at all the fonts, and say, oh, look how cool that is. I'd have to go to a book from a company called Letraset, and I'd flip through the pages of a book on paper, not on a computer. And I would try and find different fonts that I thought might look good for the words Graphics Inc. And then what I would do is, as I flipped through that book, I would get something like tracing paper like this that had a grid on it, and I would sit there with my pen and this tracing paper and pick the letters off the page to create the word Graphics Inc., one letter at a time with my pencil, right? And then I would try a whole bunch of different fonts like that. And actually what I did on this one is I got lazy. I didn't want to do it with my pencil. And instead what I did was I went to a store. So I got in my car. I drove to a store. I went to a copy machine. I laid the pages of the book down for the fonts I like. I made copies of those pages. And then I went back to my studio, which was my one-bedroom apartment, and my studio was in the living room. And I cut up those little letters one at a time, glued them on here one at a time to build these words with the different fonts to see what the font would look like, okay? So think how long that took me, right? Think how long it takes you now to type the word, change the font, done, right? Okay, and so these came only at this size, so that's what I did. So there's one example. And then I made copies of it here to see what it looks like. And then I started playing with the idea of Graphics Inc., instead of incorporated, the play on words, INK for ink. And I wanted this ink splotch. Now, Tyler, what would you do if you wanted to make this ink splotch today?
I'd honestly probably go on Google and search some like splattered like ink or something, and then grab it and open it up in InDesign, and then ungroup it and take what I want, and then regroup it.
Okay, because Tyler knows how to mess around with a computer already. So he'd go steal something off the internet. He called grab it, but he would steal something off the internet, and then he'd play with it. And so, George, how would you do it today? What would you do?
Same thing.
You do the same thing, right? Or you guys would go to Photoshop. Who's the Photoshop whiz here? Yeah, so you go to Photoshop and you probably make it in Photoshop, right? How would you make it in Photoshop since you're a Photoshop whiz?
I have like the pen for it. So
Oh, you have a
because
tablet pen.
Yeah.
You
so
draw.
I love to draw on it.
Okay. Okay. Well, in the olden days, there was no computer, right? So you know what I did for my little ink spot? I went to my art box, my art toolbox. I went for the bottle of ink, real ink, and I put a piece of paper on the ground. I opened my art bottle. I went outside doing this. I did this. I just squeezed the ink until it made splats on the ground. That's what I did. Now, what you guys would do now to take this ink splat off the paper that was on the ground is you'd either take your cell phone, you'd take your digital camera, you'd lay it on a scanner, but that wasn't the case long ago. There weren't any of those items, okay? And what there was, what was his name? Dennis. There was Dennis.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis had a film shop, okay? And so again, I take my ink splats, and where do I have it? I'm looking for the artboard for these ink splats. All right, I can't find it. So I took the ink splat. Who's got the type there? Is the ink splat one piece or is it many little pieces? It's one piece. Oh, it's not on that one. Okay. So what I did for my ink splat when I dropped it on the paper, it wasn't this size. So what I did was I cut up different parts of the ink splats and glued them on a different piece of paper to make the ink splat look exactly how I wanted the ink splat to look, right? So I took little parts of splats and put them together. And then I took my pasted up artboard of my little ink splats and I drove to Dennis. Now I used to live in West Hollywood where I used to have, so with my studio, so I'm switching houses now. So when I lived in West Hollywood, I had a service that would come twice a day to pick up my artwork and drop off my artwork, because you have to make what's called stats or film or photographic copies of your artwork for production. There were no digital files. Then I moved to Ventura, which was like moving to, what's your town?
Fisher.
Fisher. It's like moving to Fisher. Okay, so I moved to Ventura, which felt like Fisher to me. Okay, so no longer did I have twice a day pickup. I had to drive to Dennis. And so I drive to Dennis's shop, and I had this tight little deadline. And in Hollywood, in West Hollywood, like I said, they pick up twice a day, so I'd get it like this. Not with Dennis. With Dennis, you'd have to mosey in. You know the phrase mosey in? No, it's probably not a Swedish or Dutch phrase. Mosey in would be kind of like, you got to kind of like go in real slow. The pace is real slow. And I couldn't do my West Hollywood thing of, okay, I need it now, can I have it please? I had to do that. Hey Dennis, how you doing? How's the family? Oh look, chocolate bars for your kids' soccer team. That's great, nice, you're selling those, it's good. Work busy? Yeah, okay. So we do the little niceties, and then I'd say, so Dennis, I need this ink spot. I need it for an ad. I need it different sizes. And Dennis would say, oh, okay, thanks. I'll take care of that for you. And I'd say, so Dennis, when do you think I could have it? And he'd, oh, a couple days. It's Tuesday today. Maybe the end of the day, Thursday. Oh, Dennis, that's so great. Thank you so much for being willing to do it for me. You know, I have an ad deadline. I'm wondering if your schedule, if you could squeeze me in for somebody. And you know, I need
chocolate in my life, so I'm going to take that whole box of soccer candy bars. How much do I owe you? And he'd say, oh, yeah, that's good. All right, we'll work that out. And he'd say, well, maybe I could have it on Wednesday. Oh, Dennis, I got to have the ad to the printer on Wednesday. Is there any way I could maybe have it like at the end of the day today? Well, we'll see. I'll call you at the end of the day and let you know if I had time. And that's what life was like, right? And so what Dennis had to do to make what you're looking at is he took my original ink spot. Oh, I didn't tell you about my type. Let me tell you about my type. I got to digress a little bit more. So my type, before I designed this logo, is I made samples of it, right? So with this one in particular, with silver ink pen, I had to draw with my hand this type and this ink spot to see if I'm going to like this paper and this ink on this paper, okay? You do it by hand. And you do it because it's hundreds of dollars to print something. And I wanted to know before I did this what paper I was going to like, what font I might like, how it was going to look on a specific paper. And so I made all these little prototypes for myself of this graphics ink. And then I settled on the type. And then, remember the book that I got the type out of? So the type came from a company called Letraset. And with Letraset, you'd go to an art store. So I'd have to get in the car, drive to an art store. No internet to have it shipped to me. And I'd drive to the art store. I'd select the font that I wanted, for example. And I'd have to buy a sheet of Letraset paper. So it had letters on it. And it would have, let's say, 2 uppercase A's, 2 uppercase B's, 2 uppercase, and so forth. And then, let's say, 4 lowercase A's, 1 lowercase Z, 1 Q, right, on one carrier sheet of paper. And this is a long time ago. This is over 20 years ago. And one sheet of this Letraset type would be one font size, let's say 36 point. You all know point sizes now, I know you do. And it costs $7.95 for one sheet. So if this had more than, let's say I needed 4 P's and my sheet only had 3 P's on it, I'd have to buy another sheet, okay? And then I buy this sheet of Letraset, and I don't have any samples because I used to give it to my daughter when she was little to play with. And you take this Letraset sheet, you put it on top of grid paper with a light source beneath it so you could see the grid, and you take a burnisher. Does anybody not know what a burnisher is? Burnisher is something that you can rub down with, apply pressure to, like a pen tip, but not sharp, so it won't cut through anything. And you burnish down this type. So, for example, here I created an ad, and the headline was, "We've got designs on you." And so I buy the type. It was 36 point. I rub down the type. I decide where I want my letters overlapping. Remember I showed you kerning the other day, how you can make letters sit on top of each other? I made this W and E sit on top of each other, and I burnish down this type. If you screwed up a letter, like it cracked or broke or you got a funny edge, you'd have to do it again. Okay, so it gets kind of expensive. You can't make mistakes, and you got to be careful, and you can't drink too much coffee, which I tend to do. So then you burnish down these letters. So what I'm going to let you do, what I'm going to let you see right here is this. I was making this ad called "We've Got Designs on You," and this is the artboard for it. So look at the type here, "We've got designs on you." I think it's justified, which means the type aligns on the left side and it aligns on the right side. So notice that some of the type is bigger than the other type, right? All right. So on your computer, you would just increase the point size to do that, and you specify justified, and it would span out. Here, I had to buy my Letraset sheet of paper. I had to rub down my letters. My type was exactly the same size. I had to use my math brain, which is really a challenge for me. And I'd measure the length of the type, and knowing I wanted each line length to be identical, I'd have to measure the percentage of how to increase the type so the type would be the same line length. You all follow me? I'm going to pass this around. So I had to go back to Dennis, right? And I had to ask Dennis if he could give me what's called stats, photographic reproductions of this rub down type, bless you. And he had to photograph it 3 different sizes. And how he would do that is he would have a machine, this is the control machine, in a dark room, in a light room. The machine would be from here all the way down to here. And here, he would have a big glass frame the span of my arms, and this glass frame would face all of you, and he would fold down this big glass frame. He would open the door to this big glass frame. He'd put this type inside the big glass frame. He'd close the door to the big glass frame. He'd fold the frame up, and for each percentage I specified, 126%, 149%, and 145%, he would move the glass frame either closer to the camera source, which is right there, or further away from the camera source if it needs to be bigger. You all understand that concept, right? And so he'd make 3 different photographs on what's called on light-sensitive paper, so it's like a photograph, in order to give me my type of 3 different sizes. And he'd do that, so I'd drive down, I'd go tell him what I needed, I'd specify it, he'd tell me when to pick it up depending on how many candy bars I bought, and then I'd come back to Dennis, and each time he took a photograph, which is called a stat or a VLOX, that's the terminology, it would be about $10, depending on the size of the paper. It might be $20 if it's bigger. So now I've spent at least $30, and I've had my rub down type, so that's $40, right? Not including my gas and my waiting time. And then once I got my VLOXs, I would paste them up. I would get this. This is a VLOX, and on the back of it is this stuff. It's going to feel gross. It's wax. And when you would paste things up on an artboard, you wouldn't want to paste it down with glue because that would be permanent. So you ran the VLOX through a waxer, which is a machine that melts wax, bars of wax, and it has a roller, so when you run it through, the back side of it gets coated. And if I wanted to paste this up here, I'd burnish it down. Now you know the term burnisher. I'd rub it down, and it would hold tight. And actually, you can see pretty much how I created it. So I'm going to pass around my artboard for you. I'm going to pass around the VLOX, and I'm going to pass around the rub down letters. And you're going to see, I'm also going to pass around these rub down letters here for another thing I did, and you can start scratching at this and you can see how fragile those rub down letters are, okay?
So is that what you would give to the client, the little cardboard?
Yes, this is called, I'll get more specific about these. This is an artboard. So once I've put my ad together, what you'll see on this artboard is I've got the type I just explained to you. I've got the logo I explained to you, and when Dennis photographed that logo for me, made a VLOX, he made it in film because I wanted it, what is that, 5 different sizes, 4 different sizes? 4 different sizes. So think about it. He photographed it 4 different sizes, so that's $10, $20, $30, $40 more dollars. Then he made a composite piece of film, and then he made another VLOX, so not only am I paying, so now I'm at $50, and every one of these is another $10. So you added my money up? It's expensive, right? All right. And then I have this VLOX to cut up, put wax on the back, and paste up on my artboard. And this is the artboard, yes. And this is what I do. And then when I had my composite ad, the final ad I wanted to have, I did 2 things. Because you couldn't send a digital file to a magazine, for example, or you couldn't send a digital file to a printer because there were no digital files. You had to send them film, negatives.
I have kind of a strange question. Do you think now, because you kind of have to do less, you get paid
a little less to do this? Did you get paid more back in the day because it took so many man
Oh my
hours? It took so
God.
much money to go out and actually do it.
Oh, it's such a big question. Money. You guys always love money questions.
Sure.
Okay, so the question is, do I think that I get paid less today?
Well, I would say like I'm not trying to make this personal. I'm saying graphic designers like as a whole.
No. I want to understand. Do I think I get paid less for my time today because I do things more
Because
quickly?
it takes less work hours because you don't for like to just print out one graphic.
It's a really excellent question. Okay. Well, first off, I was starting out when I did this, so my billable rate was less because I wasn't as experienced. I wasn't a student. I actually never formally went to school in graphic design until I got my master's in graphic design. But then I have so much experience at this. I don't want this to sound arrogant. It's just I've done this so long
It's
that.
just natural.
Well, and basically I had more experience than the teachers who were teaching me. I just wanted to get my master's at that point because I'd been doing this so many years. But did I get paid? No. You know, I bill hourly now for my time.
So it's still
And I billed hourly for my time then. So I billed appropriately for my skill level at that point
it's just
hourly.
a lot more hours.
It was a lot more hours, and then there was a lot. You know, half the time you can bill hourly for your time, but there's often a ceiling where people just aren't going to pay more. You know, nowadays I'm an expensive designer, but for example, and you're starting out, so somebody might get you guys at a much less hourly rate than me. But it might take you 3 days to accomplish what I know in my brain to slide right into in an hour. So money is a hard thing
But
with
it
graphic design.
hasn't taken a big hit. I think considered it's pretty
Um,
relatively the same. Still pretty decent.
Do I think professionals in graphic design make as much as they did then? Yes, I think it really depends on what niche you fill. For example, what there was more frequently there, well, first off, okay, there's two thoughts I have about that for graphic designers. Graphic design was a specialty that nobody understood how to accomplish. Now, everybody's cousin does their
Yeah,
newsletter
taking
and
the
business card for
mystery
them.
out of it, kind of. Because like as you're describing like how they made things larger and smaller,
Yeah.
it's like damn, they must have got paid a lot more because people were like, oh, you know,
Well,
how
they
do you
had a
do
big
that?
equipment investment. You know, so when I, and I'll get to this, but when I bought my first computer, my first desktop computer, so that was 23 years ago. It was the age of my daughter. Bought it exactly at the same time. And I spent 23 years ago, think about this, $25,000. I bought a computer, I bought a scanner, I bought a printer, I bought professional software that you're paying $19.99 a month for. I bought, what else did I buy? That was it. That's what I bought. That was my setup.
So you have to spend less money these days just to like get.
Oh
you
my.
can get a computer for like.
Oh my God, you can spend less money. You guys pirate software. You, you know, I mean, really, what you can get away with computer-wise, it's why anybody's cousin can do graphic design. And so it is why you, if you choose to be a graphic artist, need to be a consummate professional. You need to learn the skills that are absolutely professional, and you need to know the answers so when your client asks you something, you have an answer, or you need to know what you don't know, truly. So for example, you'll learn this later in the semester. If you're designing a mailer for a client, if you're trying to launch somebody's business and you're going to design a postcard for them, your job as a graphic artist is to know the weight of paper, because if your paper weighs too much, you're going to change their mailing costs. And if they're doing 100,000 pieces they're mailing, and then you've changed the weight of their mailing for those 100,000 pieces by 5 cents, do the math. That's huge to a company. You as a graphic designer need to know that you need to check out the paper weight, and you need to go to the post office. I'll tell you horror stories about terrible mistakes I've made or not known or that have cost people money, and knowing that,
What's
having
the worst one? What's the most money you ever cost everybody?
well, I have lots of stories like this, and actually, I feel kind of vindicated because I did my homework, I did my due diligence. In other words, that it shouldn't have been a problem, but it was. And here's my horror story. See, you guys, you'll never get to class to the rest of the stuff. So my horror story is this. So when I got my first job as a graphic artist, so the first job I got in the advertising field was I took the highest paying job that day that I could find that had the word advertising in it, which was at a newspaper. And it turned out what that really meant was I had to sell ads, which is just not my thing. And, but it was so interesting to learn the newspaper business. And again, it's before computers. The only computers they had at that time were word processors, typing letters and stuff like that. And so I would go hang around the back shop at the newspaper and watch the people in the back shop, the men, there were no women. It was union, and I'd watch them in the back shop at the newspaper paste up the artboards, which are the artboards I'll show you by Lauren. And I would ask questions. How do you do this? Why do you do it that way? How do you know? How do you this? How do you that? And I asked more questions, and they were happy to talk about their profession. Okay, so that's how I learned it. So then the first job I got in advertising was for a national furniture manufacturer. And how I got that job was I saw it, it paid money, it had the word advertising manager in it. It encompassed all of advertising, in other words, graphic design, designing, campaigns, media buying, placing ads in publications, right, in magazines and stuff, printing things. It was the ad manager. I got to oversee everything. Had I ever done that a day? No. And how did I get the job? I made a really great looking resume, and it was honest. It was totally honest, and I dressed for the interview, and which people don't do anymore, which is amazing to me. And I met with the people, and they said, okay, this is what we're going to do. All the people we're interviewing, we're asking you to give us our first campaign on spec, and the person who gives us the best campaign gets the job. And, okay, I could do that. And so I gave them a campaign, and I figured out how to graphically do it, and I asked my buds at the newspaper that I asked so many questions of and asked for help and came up with a campaign and gave them a very professional presentation of their ad campaign. And what people don't do anymore also is I wrote them a thank you letter for the interview. I don't know any of you who've done that. You guys think about it. And have you? No? Okay. I wrote a thank you letter for the interview, and then I called to follow up a week later to say, I just want you to know I'm extremely interested in the job. I just want to know what the process is. Have you received my materials? And I was in their face. Not obnoxious, but they knew this girl was hungry for that job. And they liked my campaign, and I got the job. Okay. So now I'm learning by the seat of my pants a job that I know nothing about, but they think that I can. And so, for example, one of the things you're going to learn, and I'll show you, I'll pass this stuff around, I don't need to hold it. So one of the things I learned is type. Now you type things on your computer, and you type it right into your computer. Long ago, you had to type on a word processor, a page of type, and spec it. I introduced you to specking type the other day. In chapter 2, you have to spec type as like the last assignment called production sequence, where they show you proofreaders' marks. Has anybody gotten to this yet? Yeah, they show you proofreaders' marks and so forth. So what would happen is, I'm going to grab these artboards now. It's a good time for me to introduce them to you. So what would happen is, I would come to a typesetter, and I went to this guy named Sid's Type, and I spoke to Sid, and I said, Sid, I don't know anything about typesetting. Tell me what you want. Let me be your best client. Show me how to do it, so when I bring you something, you smile and say, oh, I totally know what she needs. And that's what he did. Sid said, you take the typed paper, and you, in the margins of the typed paper, so it doesn't look like this. This is the result that comes out of a computer, a typography, a typesetting machine, okay? You get what's called galley type. Galley type comes out like this. comes on a piece of light sensitive paper, and there was a typesetter. They did have a computer just for type, but it was all put in for code. So like if you were looking at code for the internet, that's what they would be typing. They'd be typing code to generate type. And so next to my typewritten sheet of paper, I'd write, for example, for the headline, I'd write avant-garde 36-point type. Remember that fraction I showed you on the board the other day? Over 42-point leading, baseline to baseline. And I'd say the margin width is whatever. I'd have to tell them how many picas wide, not inches. And so, for example, here, how to be a graphic designer. That's, let's say, Nueva, 24-point on 30-point leading, flush right. And I'd specify that in the margins of everything. So that's what I learned how to do. I am getting to my biggest gap, I promise you. I'm digressing. So this is galley type. So I learned how to typeset things. So when I designed for this company, this isn't what I did for that company. So when I designed for this company, I went to every resource I could. So one of the things I did was a marketing piece for this company, and we set out like a flyer on a new product or whatever marketing campaign. We put in there a business reply postcard. Everybody's familiar with those. They fall out of magazines. You know, they have the little bars on the back, and they have a little indicia in the corner, not a real stamp, but a pretend stamp that says posted paid, right? Okay. So I designed the flyer. We're going to send it out to 30,000 customers. It's a national company, or 60,000, doesn't really matter the number. Big, a lot of pieces. So we're going to print an envelope, big catalog size envelope. We're going to put the flyer in it. We're going to put a business reply card in so they can fill it out and request that a salesperson contact them. So I take the flyer, the mock-up of it, not the real thing. I take the postcard, the mock-up of it, not the real thing. So the little pretend prototype of it, right? Pretend prototypes had to be the right weight paper. This is a prototype of an invitation that was designed on this paper. So I had to figure out how it was going to fold. I had to figure out where the headlines were going to go. How would you guys do this on the computer now? Do you have a clue? No, right? You wouldn't know by sitting in front of your computer screen either. You'd have to make a mock-up. Some things just don't disappear. You have to make mock-ups. I make mock-ups all the time. And so, anyway, so I took the mock-up, the paper weight, the size, everything trimmed to the printer who was going to print it. He says, okay. I said, can you give me the right paper? He gives me the right paper. I go to the post office. I show them the artwork before it's printed. I said, postal person, we're going to do this 30,000 piece mailing. Is this accurate? Do I have everything the right size, the right weight, this, what's going to cost us? How's it going to be carrier sorted? Do you know what that is? Carrier sorted is when you get a big mailing list of 30,000, you organize them by zip code, and you bag them in different bags for different zip codes because you do the work the post office is supposed to do, which saves you money, postal costs. So the person at the post office says, everything's great. Go ahead and print it. Print it, go back to the post office, show them the printed pieces, all put together. How's this? Postal person says, everything's great, no problem. So I did my job, right? I was very conscientious about it. So then, this office that I worked at, they had the entire room of 30 personnel, you know, the office staff, bag and sort and collate and mix the envelopes, the labels, the business reply card, the so forth. Everything got sealed, got put in its bags, right? You get the idea? A lot of work. We go to the post office, take the bags, guy who's looking through the bulk stuff, opens it up, slits one open, checks it out because that's their job, looks and he goes, can't send this out. No? Nope, you don't have a business reply bars on the back. Oh. I brought it to you a couple times. Sorry. So what happened was, this is how the company decided to handle it. They opened all the envelopes, they pulled out the cards, they stacked all the cards up, they printed the bars on, and they stuck them back in the envelopes. More money, more time, right? Right. And that, I think that was probably the biggest mistake. And the reality is I don't want to completely own that because I did my due diligence, but what I didn't do was I didn't have enough knowledge, life experience, to know that those bars go on the back. You guys will never forget about business reply bars, will you? Never, never, right?
And neither did you.
No, and neither did I. Here's another example. You want to, I know you guys love horror stories. Horror stories, good. So I had a client, and when I started out, you know, any work is work, right? And so I had a client, no budget, they never had any money. So because I was a conscientious designer, I knew a one-color print job is cheaper than a four-color print job. One-color print job is cheaper than a two-color print job. So I designed a business opening invitation for the client, and their color was this navy blue. And I got some pretty stock, pretty paper, and I maximized my design, which was I took a piece of paper, I made a mock-up, right? Okay, the invitation was actually, pretend that this isn't folded, okay? The invitation was actually this size sheet of paper, and then I folded this short like that. And this was a solid navy blue with white type, the paper showing through. The type was cream color paper. So this was solid navy blue, so half of this was blue. The paper showed through for the type saying you're invited. I thought I was so clever. And then I had all the information here or something like that. And you open it up and there was more information here. And then on the back was whatever, something more information. But this was a solid blue. And we printed it on coated paper, cream stock, Lustro cream dull. And they printed them, they were economical because I got a lot of mileage out of it. There wasn't anything too tricky about it, folded short. The printer, the cheapest printer I could find, stacked all these in a box. I did a press check. I always do a press check, which means when something prints, I stand at the press and I make sure it's perfect. And then you sign it off, and they have to match to what you signed off. And this printer I used to use actually a lot because they were the cheapest in town and everybody wanted the cheapest price. So now I've got navy blue here, pretty cream stock here, coated paper. They stacked them in the box. They shipped them to my client. I get a call from my client, and I said, aren't they beautiful? And my client said, the whole back side has all this blue scuffy stuff on it. They didn't use the word scuffy. It has blue splotches all over it. I said, really? I said, I was there. The press check was beautiful. And I said, I'll come pick them up, no problem. So, and they actually were 2 hours from my house. So I drove 2 hours, went to pick them up, looked, and the back had all this blue crud all over it. And what happened was the printer stacked them all in the box, nice and neat, and then UPS took the box. And it rode on the truck. And every single one did this the whole time it was being shipped. So what you got was blue on the back of every invitation. So it had to be reprinted at my expense. Because if I am printing something, my client shouldn't be responsible for that. That's not their problem. UPS isn't responsible for a box doing this. The printer wants to say it's not their responsibility for the fact that UPS did this. So everybody wants to go like this, right? Everybody points to everybody else. So what you don't know, but now you will never forget, is when you print a solid like that, you're going to print what's called a coating on your paper. It's either a varnish, an aqueous coating, something to seal the ink. So when it does this, absolutely nothing happens. And so at my own cost, so on one hand, I thought the printer should have said, you know, that could scuff, which they should have. And I should have had the experience to know that could scuff, which I should have. And so now, even though your client wants it cheap and doesn't want to pay for the varnish, your answer is, that could scuff. You're going to pay for it. And so I ate the cost of the printing, and that was my fault as far as I see it, and I reprinted the job. And I've had jobs where my clients sign off on everything. I make everybody prick their finger, sign in blood right here before I do anything. Because I've had print jobs. Here's an expensive one. You want another story? Do you like these stories? You do like these stories, okay. So I created a little catalog for a client, and there were computer days. This is during computer days. Little catalog, about 100 pages-ish, and we were printing 100,000 little catalogs of 100 pages. It was a $45,000 print job. And the reason I want a $45,000 print job is because I broker it, which means I pay for it, I find the printer, I mark it up, and I charge my client more money. So I make money off that, okay? Like retail stores, they make money off the clothes you're buying there. So this is a big print job, and a $45,000 print job to any print shop is great. So they kind of woo you, right? So they put you, and they also, because it was 100 pages, 100,000 pieces, it's not printed on a sheet-fed press. You'll learn more about this later. It's printed on a web press. Web press is paper that looks like a big roll, like toilet paper, paper towels, and it runs through the press like this and comes out the other end all folded. Okay? You're going to learn more about this in the class. So on this job, with so many pictures and so much, my client and I, we went over it. You know, they approved it, we revised it, approved it, corrected it, approved it. And so everything was done. They've looked at a final proof of it before it prints. Everything was done. They've signed off on everything. Every step of the way you have them sign off, because it's costly when you make a mistake. It's costly when you have a $45,000 mistake, right? And then the print shop puts me up in a hotel because they're making $45,000, right? And the press checks are around the clock because they don't interrupt jobs. They just change shifts, but the presses run 24 hours a day. So you press check, you go do something for 6 hours, you come back, you press check, you do something for 6 hours. Yeah.
Press check is just once. You just check one, looks good, go ahead.
Basically.
Okay.
And you sign a press check, yes, you check once, looks good. There's some, we'll get more into printing throughout the semester. I don't want to give you the whole semester this morning because we're going to run out of time. But yeah, basically, once you've signed it off, they have what you've approved, and they keep matching to it because presses shift color and ink, and so they keep matching to it, yes. But because it was 100 pages, all 100 pages couldn't go on at once. So you do one set, it's called one signature, another signature, that finishes off the press, they put on new printing plates, next signature. Okay, so now it's 4 a.m., they've called me up, come for your next press check, or it's 3 a.m. So I get up out of the hotel they've put me up in, I drive to the print shop in some god-awful neighborhood somewhere, and because it has to be inexpensive, right, warehousing neighborhoods, and I'm standing there, and one of the pressmen comes over and says, look, and my sales rep's there. There's always a sales rep who has to have the same horrible hours as you. And they said, look, the pressman found this. And on the sheet, when you fold things, you'll learn this later, things that in sequence, pages when you read a book, look different on how they're on a press sheet. And you'll learn. They'll be upside down, they'll be side by side. Because the paper folds up, things that you would never see side by side in a book are side by side on a press sheet. He shows me the press sheet, and there's 2 different product names and 2 identical photos. So that product has the wrong photo. Now it's been checked and checked and checked and checked, right? It's been signed off by my client in blood, pricked their finger, stuck it on the artboard. And they said, well, do you want to continue to run the job? I now know the catalog has a mistake. I see it, it's 3 a.m., catalog's got a mistake. I can call my client, wake them up, say, what do you want to do? What are they going to do at 3 a.m., right? So I have to make a judgment call because, okay, whose fault is it? Is it really my fault? Well, yeah, it's my fault because I put the wrong image in there. Did it get checked 1,000 times by many different eyes and they've approved it and signed off in blood? Yeah, they did. So I can say, oh, that's your fault. But you don't ever want to say to a client, it's your fault. You don't. That doesn't feel good. So I said to my print shop, I said, so, okay, if we stop the press that 8 pressmen are working on, because the press is larger than the size of this room, I said, if we stop the press and we have to change plates and do this, how much is it going to cost us? And the guy's like, oh, it'll be $8,000. Okay. And if we keep running it and then we rerun this signature, how much do you think it'll cost us? About $8,000. So I thought, okay, it's about an $8,000 mistake, right? And so I had to make a judgment call. Do I stop the press knowing I'm immediately incurring $8,000, or do I gamble that we'll do the $8,000 later, right? So I said, just keep running. We do the $8,000 mistake. We keep running. I call my client in the morning at a more reasonable hour. I say, everything's great. It's looking beautiful. The catalog's printing wonderfully. We're all done with the print shop, but we have one issue. This page and this page, we have the same product photo showing, blah, blah, blah. And I said, so we need to decide if we want to, I mean, I didn't point any fingers. I didn't talk about money. I just said, we need to decide if we want to correct it and rerun that signature. And the client says, oh, I see. Oh, and, I'm like, oh, too bad we didn't. Good morning.
Morning.
Too bad we didn't catch it. And they said, no, you know what? That product shows up on this page and it's fine. So who's going to ever notice? No worries, just leave it alone. So, okay, right? Okay. Because we all needed to own responsibility for it, right? Anyway, so that was another mistake issue where you could see how costly that could be. Because, for example, sometimes I'll make a change after a client has approved something. They'll say, everything's great, just change that one more thing for me. Well, I'm always terrified that I'm going to screw something up when I make that one little change. I might drop a line of type, my text flow might change on the computer. I add a word and I don't see a word that bounced off the page to another page, everything changed. So I make my clients see everything and I tell them, you need to proof everything. I try, but as a designer, first off, as a designer, you don't want to show people mistakes. You don't want to send something off knowing there's a mistake in it. But on the other hand, you want to make sure that your client always has the final word on it and signs it off. Okay, those are all my mistakes.
All of them. That was it.
Actually, I think
All
those are
three
my
mistakes.
3 big mistakes. What's that?
I say, yeah, that's the only 3 mistakes she's ever made.
Well, I made plenty of other mistakes in life. But design-wise, I'm really meticulous about proofing. I really am. I'm really meticulous, and I'm really meticulous about a protocol with clients. If you become very professional in your path with how you handle things, your client may be surprised. I had a friend hire me to do business, and I remember I handed him my contract. I said, I need you to sign the contract, and I said, I take a third up front. And he looked at me like I had brain damage. You want me to sign a contract with you? And I said, I won't do work without a contract, no matter what, no matter who it is. You don't need to pay me the money up front. I'm not worried about that. But you do need to sign the contract. And what that does is it says, we are now entering into a professional relationship. No matter how much I love you, this is a professional relationship, and here's the parameters. And I find that the only time I've ever been burned was when I was first starting out, insecure about contracts, uncomfortable with asking people to sign things. I was uncomfortable with quoting my price. I was uncomfortable with the whole thing. I didn't know how to navigate it. And some businessman wouldn't sign my contract but gave me my check. Here's your 30% up front or half up front, whatever it was. But no, I don't sign contracts. And the only time I got burned was not having a contract signed. Yeah, I got my first half, but I never saw my second half. And so being professional about how you handle things is great. It serves you well. So You guys have more stamina for listening a little more? Okay, what I want to get into, keep going with, is we talked about specking type. Yeah, sure.
I have a question. When you're working for a company, I understand like the furniture company, everything you do they own. But when you have your own business, do you own your designs? Or are you like selling your designs to that company and you can never do anything with it again?
Depends on the contract.
Mm.
The contract will define it. There is a book, I teach a portfolio class and I make everybody buy this book called Pricing and Ethical Guidelines, which is a book published by the Graphic Artists Guild. And in it has contracts. You could go to their website today. I think it's GAG, graphicartistsguild.org. And they all have contracts, I think, on the internet too, and talk about all this. Photographers, illustrators, designers, basically you own the rights to everything unless you have specifically sold the rights to it. In my old contract, it used to say artist owns the original artwork. So this is the original artwork. The reality is I would never use this for anybody else except for who the client is, right? I mean, but the reason I would own the original artwork is it would allow me to control how this is printed, because some things are printed on a use basis, or some clients buy things on a use basis. You'll get that with stock photography. Like if you go to websites where you can buy artwork, buy the use of artwork, and we'll get into this later in the semester too, you pay for the usage. So it's whatever you put in your contract.
I guess I'm wondering, so let's say you did that for somebody, could they just go take their little X-Acto knife and cut out your little logo you made and like your little bike and then make their own
My client?
next flyer? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, with that.
You know what? The answer is yes. I mean, ethically, they shouldn't if that wasn't in my
Well,
contract.
And that does make sense because like a lot of companies like update it over the years. Like
Right.
Starbucks' logo was like the exact same, but they've like changed
Yeah.
it.
But
Like,
you bet they hired a designer for it.
well, yeah, but that's like kind of what she's saying. Is that,
No,
like, once
yeah.
you make something,
Well, logos I sell outright
Oh.
because I absolutely, why would you create an original logo and ever use it for somebody else? That would be unethical.
Right.
So logos very specifically
Unless
are
you
owned
want
by the
royalties
company.
every time they use it. Or is that-
You can't do that. You know, I mean, yes, you can do that. You could cut a deal for it, which is how so many people get rich. But as you go out into the graphic design world, unless you're some iconic, famous artist,
Right.
that's just not going to be a conversation you're probably going to have in all reality. In other words, I've designed logos for people. And I've done all kinds of artwork, and I will now give them their digital files to work with, all of them. And you know, I had a client one day say that they wanted all their original files for me, and I could have done many things. I could have charged them for my time in compiling them and giving it to them. I could have said, no, I own all of these. I have original illustrations I created for you for the use of that one brochure, and I own them. You don't have the rights to receive them. And I definitely could have asked for money. And my personal way of living in the world that I'm happy to live with for myself was, I said, absolutely, no problem, no problem, let me get those for you. And I handed them over everything because I think what goes around comes around personally. I think you act in a generous way, and for the most part, that's what comes to you. I had another client, you'll see some of their work as examples throughout the semester. And I did all this work and I brokered a lot of printing because as a graphic artist, your hourly wage, you're not going to get rich off of. I won't say you won't earn a living, but you need to find a way to, I always say, make money while you sleep. Because if we don't make money while we sleep, then we're only working so many hours a day. We're limited to that. Anybody who is employed and gets an hourly wage knows there's a ceiling to it, right? There's a ceiling to it. So I had a company I did work for. I brokered a lot of their printing, which is wonderful. They loved it because everything was beautiful. If ever there was a problem, it would be, no problem, we'll reprint that for you. Because because if there's a problem, in that case, it means something happened that could have been prevented by somebody else, and they'd reprint it. So they called me up and they said, you know, my husband's unemployed. He just got a new job with a print shop. We want to have him walk into the print shop with all of our printing. Can we have all of our printing files? And my answer should have been, are you crazy, right? But my answer instead was, absolutely, no problem. I'm so happy that your husband got work. Here's everything. And the truth is, it was like a knife in my heart, because I had actually just bought my house, thinking how lucky I was to have this lovely client. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to pay my bills? That's really what I thought. And, but nonetheless, I gave them all the files, and their husband worked there for a while and did all the printing. And then when their husband stopped working at that place, they said, okay, we need you to do the printing again. And they came back to me because my answer was always the generous answer, and their response to me was always the generous response back. So, you know, decide who you want to be in the world, right? I mean, that's really what it is. Okay, digressing again. This job, I want to talk to you in context of InDesign, okay? What I want to talk to you about is you now know the flow. You now know the flow of artboards and icons and stuff like that. So this artboard represents, so Harpo, I need help, please. Will you hold that up, please? And will you hold up that guy, please? Okay, all right. So this artboard represents both the things Harpo's holding up, which is, this artboard is 100% scale to that poster. And look at that poster on that brochure. See the first page, the first panel of that brochure? That is a reduced version of that poster. Can you see the graphics in it? Okay. Now, what I want you to see is you now understand how many candy bars I had to buy from Dennis to get my graphics taken. Okay. So this is now later where the printer was doing the film work for this job, not Dennis anymore. Because this job has a story too. This job is old. It's probably 22 years old, this job. It's actually 23 years old exactly. And my client calls me up. My daughter wasn't born yet. I thought, oh, I'm going to take off time for my daughter when she was born. My client calls me up and they said, you know, we have a rush job. We have 6 weeks. We have $25,000 budget, and we got to get it done in 6 weeks. And you know what my answer was?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I thought, I can do anything for 6 weeks, even if my daughter is a newborn, right? I could. I did. And so what I did was, this was the County of Ventura, and they had an incentive program. Thank you. You're doing a really good job. You're not off the hook yet. They had an incentive program, which was you get $300 if you ride share, skateboard, ride your bike, walk, have some alternative method to go to work. It was mandated by the state of California. Bless you. And so we designed this blue skies and green in your pocket. We created the graphics. And out of that $25,000, that did not go in my pocket. $15,000 of that, $12,000 of that was film work. $12,000 of it was film work, creating all the film and negatives and different sizes of things that went into the poster, the brochure, and this postcard. And so also what went into that was the printing. So let's say the printing was $8,000 or something like that. And then the rest of the stuff that went in the pocket might have been my budget, my labor. But okay, so now you can pass those around, and I'll walk through this. But the reason why I'm showing you these things is, how many of you have heard of layers in Photoshop or InDesign or Illustrator? Okay, let me show you what a layer is. Layer is terminology for this. Layers. That's why they have something called layers. This is called ruby lith or amber lith, and this designates different fields of ink color. So on this artboard, I had an overlay, you'll hear that term, where I specify, so when you create an InDesign document, you create your document size with a trim, you create your bleed, which is what exceeds the boundary of the trim page, and you have something called the slug, where you make notes in the outside border of the artboard. Like when you work in InDesign and you work in Illustrator, they call that your artboard because we used to work off of artboards. They call things that you want separated by layers because of these acetate layers on the artboard, right? Here's the term. So what we did here, so now on the computer, you guys would just pick an ink color out with your little eyedrop tool, get your ink color, and specify it on the computer. This is printed with what's called Pantone Matching System Color, PMS. You're going to hear that a lot. Pantone Matching System Color. It is. And so when you say, what color do you want? You say, oh, I want PMS, what's my color? And I specify it. And because I didn't have a computer to create all these graphics, I had to create artboards for them. I have to call out the color. So if you look at the mountains, if you look at the sky, it's a turquoise, it's a PMS, whatever blue I specified. And then if you look at this mountain range, one part of this mountain range, the part that's not overlapping, is a solid purple, another PMS color. But then you see this little dark field right here where it overlaps one another, where the two layers overlap, where my finger is going. That's because we're printing with a solid green and a 40% purple. And you know how I figured all that out? I had to guess. I had to figure out in my brain, understanding color theory, what was going to happen when I took that purple color and added 40% of the green tint to it with a screen, and how it was going to make that color right here to create that deeper shade. And then what I did was I cut in my designations. When you know how I said you make boxes out of everything in InDesign, and one of the boxes you're going to create in InDesign is going to be like a rectangle, and it's going to have an X through it. Anybody seen that yet?
Yeah.
No? Yeah? No? Yeah. And that's because right here on my artboard, here, you get to hold that one, please. Right here, there. You see this little orange square? That little orange square is what's called FPO, for position only. And it means this graphic, this icon here, see the little stat in place for the scale of it? This graphic here is going to go here, and this little black icon of that is FPO, for position only. So in InDesign, you're going to draw a box like that. It's going to have an X in it, and you're going to put a real graphic in it. That's why they look like that. That's why they have an X in it, because long ago we used to draw these little rectangles, put an X in it for position only, which means it's a graphic box. So the reason why I show you these artboards is so you can understand the workflow that it required. And I've been talking so much that I'm running out of steam. These little icons here are FPO. They're for position only. So if you're counting Dennis again with his $10, $10, $10, $10, $10, $10, $10, $10, just for position only, not real artwork. And if you come and if you look at the brochure, you realize that these graphics each had their own artboard because they're multicolored. They each had their own artboard and had to be composed together with this job. Now you understand why $12,000 in film work. Each of these had their own artboard, had to be scaled down, and these are indicating for position only. Hang on one second, Lauren. And then each type here, notice how the type wraps around these little icons. You just put a little graphic in when you're in InDesign. You go to text wrap, you say wrap around that baby, and it's done. Me, I had to measure the line length here, 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 to make sure when I put the graphic there, the line length wouldn't be too long. So when I spec'd my type here, I knew I had to indent it. When I was here, it was flush left, but I knew the line length had to be shorter. Here, the line length is longer. And that's when I specified my type, and I wrote all those fractions down for my typesetter to follow. I had to spec it all. And then if they have a typo, gotta wait another 24 hours. So I pick it up, I look, I go, oops, you made a typo. And they say, oh, I'll fix it for you. You can get it tomorrow. So think about how long this takes. So these were the artboards I would send to the printer to get all those posters, and then I would just specify on each artboard the different scale of things and so forth. So I'm going to pass these around so you guys can look. And I'll pass the brochure so you can look. Okay, Lauren, yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so each alignment of where the graphic was like $10.
Say it again, what?
Each like on like the brochure, like each where the.
Well, for this one, what happened was I took the artboards and handed them to the print shop because there was an artboard for the postcard. There was an artboard for this side, and this icon, this logo, is exactly the same size as the one that's in this brochure here. They're similar, but they're different, right? And, you know, when this job was printed, I told my printer what specifications there were. You know, like the brochure is the flap tore off of this. This is what I would do. I would call up my printer. Best thing you could do as a designer is make best friends with a printer. We're going to, at the end of the semester, I haven't told you this yet, but we're going to go to the print shop. Let's try and think if they printed this. They might have printed this. Yeah, they did print this. We're going to go to the print shop that printed this down in Oxnard. We do a little field trip. It's far, it's Oxnard, but everybody who drives there and gets up early in the morning and gets themselves there thinks it's the best thing they ever did in the whole wide world because it's completely cool. Nobody's ever said, I can't believe you made us do that. It's wonderful. You'll learn everything, you'll see everything. By the end of the semester, you'll know everything by then, so you'll walk around and you'll feel really confident. You're going to go, I know what you're talking about. I understand that. And you're going to feel very professional. But what I would do, for example, is I would say to my printer, my sales rep at my print shop, I would say I have an 8.5 by 14 brochure. It's a trifold. One panel folds 3.5 inches, the other one folds to 5.5, and it has a perforation along the 8.5 inch line, and it's 4 PMS colors over 4 PMS colors with an aqueous coating to protect it from, right? And that's the conversation you have, and then you say you're going to print 30,000 of these, how much is it? And with a job like this, you print it in more than one print shop. I mean, you quote it with more than one print shop to see. And you give them those specs. And you'd also give them a mock-up. And this is before digital files. So the reason why I start with this is when you specify type, I want you to understand what point size is. I want you to understand column width, which was always measured in picas. Picas is a P. Not PT, that's points, but P for picas. Also, I want you to understand what leading is. Leading is, we'll look at some videos about type, but leading is where you put bars of lead, I told you this the other day, under each line, because type was set up with little characters. Little characters were called sorts. There were pieces of lead that had a letter on it. And each letter, each sort, would sit side by side. They'd put a bar of lead below it. They'd put a new line of sorts. It would sit in a wood frame. And that's how they build a page for type and printing. But we'll see a video better than me explain that. But understanding artboard, layers, overlay, slug area, bleed area, that's what you do on a computer, and that's why it exists. And who knows why there's return on a keyboard? Yeah, you do go down to the next line. Who knows why it's called return and not next line? Because you return to the left-hand side of the page. That's close. That's another good guess.
The beginning of the line, you return to the beginning.
You return to the beginning. That's it. You ready for my big answer? Anybody ever seen a manual typewriter?
Oh yeah.
So there's this little roller in a manual typewriter, and there's an arm. Who's never seen a manual typewriter? Anybody? You've seen them in pictures at least, right? So there's a little arm, and there's a big roller right here. And here's the keys down here. And so what would happen is every time you type, the carriage would move a letter, right? And then you get to the end of the line, you get to that margin guide that stopped you, which is why you have margin guides in InDesign. There'd be a little piece of metal blocking you from going further, the margin guide. That little piece of metal, it's a margin guide. And your carriage would stop because the margin guide would stop you from typing. And then you take your hand and you hit the return, and you get a carriage return. You return the carriage back to the original left-hand side of the page. And that's why it's called return.
Some call it enter.
And some PC users call it enter. That's true. Okay, that was a lot of talking. Any questions about any of that? Did I answer Vicky questions?
Yeah.
I have more Vicky answers too, but no more questions? Okay, then, all right, let's just use the rest for lab time because I think I'm done talking.
I just have one small question.
Yeah.
As far as charging goes, is it common to charge by the hour or by project?
That's a really good question. So Kim's question was, should we be charging by the hour or should we be charging by the project? I find if you're not confident as a designer, you might say to your client, do you have a project range? And decide if that works for you, truly. Usually I'll have a client when I do a project, and we will talk about this because it's another lecture. Basically, you'll find out a client budget, and then you'll figure out if that includes their printing or just design work. Most clients haven't a clue, and the more you can take care of for them, in other words, oh, I'll handle the printing for you, oh, I'll handle, it puts you at risk. You have to come up with $100 or $50 or something, but if you ask for money up front, hopefully you organize things well. Anyway, so it depends. It really does depend. I think when you're first starting out and you might take forever doing a project because you're going to be a perfectionist about it and want to do a really good job and not mess up, you're going to take too long to charge them hourly, which is what I'm saying. I can probably accomplish something in an hour that might take you guys 2 weeks to do. I mean, I'm exaggerating, obviously. But that way, you won't feel guilty if you take longer. You'll know what you're going to get paid. You'll know the way to manage it. So for starting, I'd probably do a project. I tell my clients now that if I give them a project rate instead of an hourly rate, I'm going to overcharge them because I don't want to eat it. And I say, if you just pay me hourly,